The world's oldest president has been re-elected. Paul Biya, 92, will remain president of Cameroon. He has been in power for 43 years and is entering his 8th term. Hundreds of supporters of the opposition leader demonstrated in various cities against the conduct of the elections, despite a ban on demonstrations. They clashed with police, who used tear gas and water cannons. 4 demonstrators were shot dead in Douala, the country's largest city. More than 100 people were also arrested. Who is the world's oldest president, and how come he has been in power for so long? The opposition and its supporters say that the authorities rigged the elections of Cameroon. Critics also say that the elections were not fair. The last few times Biya was elected, low voter turnout and minorities' fear of voting played an important role in the outcome. 2/3 of the Cameroonians have never known any other president. Since he took office in 1982, millions of Cameroonians have been born, grown up and grow old under the same leadership. Paul Biya, now 92, is not a political choice for them, but a reality, a fait accompli. You don't hear or read much about Cameroon. Until several years ago, it was one of the most stable countries in Africa with a good infrastructure, but the West African country has becoming more unstable, especially in the northwest near the Nigerian border. Tens of thousands of Cameroonians have fled that region to escape the violence of separatists. Cameroon has a French-speaking and English-speaking population, but originally it was a colony owned by the German Empire. Before World War I, Cameroon was a German colony that was known as Cameroon from 1884 to 1916. The Germans developed infrastructure and plantations, but their rule was harsh, relying on forced labor and military repression. The interior had to be made ready for mining and rubber plantations. Military expeditions were necessary to bring these areas under German control. Local rulers could mostly remain. The religion of Islam was respected, and no Western missionaries were led into the area. After the Agadir crisis, 1911, the French got Morocco, and Germany got a free hand in the Central African territories, which were added to Cameroon, named New Cameroon. The treatment of the local population was harsh. They had to work under slave-like conditions on the plantations and endured heavy taxes. Criticism arose from the motherland, and in 1906, the German parliament dissolved and new elections were held because of this. When the First World War broke out, Cameroon was surrounded by enemy forces, British, French and Belgians. The goal of the Germans was to hold out as long as possible. Outgunned and outmanned, the Germans tried to avoid open battles and made tactical retreats inland. They fought some defensive battles in order to save ammunition. They held out until the beginning of 1916. Then a part of the German forces pulled into neutral Spanish Guinea, from where some officers made it to the Netherlands and from there to Germany, and others, they surrendered. When Germany lost the First World War, its colonies were taken away under the Treaty of Versailles 1919. Cameroon was divided between France and Britain under League of Nations mandates. The division wasn't equal. France got about 80% of the territory, French Cameroon, while Britain received the remaining 20%, split into 2 strips along the Nigerian border, the northern Cameroons and the southern Cameroons. The French imposed their language, legal system, and centralized administration, while the British governed their part indirectly through Nigeria, using English law and education. This created 2 very different colonial experiences. When French Cameroon gained independence in 1960, it became the Republic of Cameroon. A year later, in 1961, the British administrated regions held a referendum. Northern Cameroons voted to join Nigeria, while Southern Cameroons chose to join Cameroon. This union created a bilingual country, officially recognizing both French and English as national languages. Cameroon's path to independence from France was far from peaceful. After World War II, the rise of anti-colonial movements across Africa reached French Cameroon, where nationalist groups began demanding self-rule. The most important of these was the Union des Populations du Cameroun, UPC, founded in 1948. The UPC, led by figures like Ruben Nyobe, called for immediate independence, reunification with British Cameroon, and an end to French domination. France, however, viewed the UPC as a communist threat, especially during the Cold War, and banned it in 1955. This led to a brutal conflict known as the Cameroon War or the Hidden War, which lasted from 1955 to 1964. The UPC went underground and launched a guerrilla campaign against French forces and later against the post-independence Cameroonian government. The French response was ruthless. Entire villages were destroyed, and tens of thousands of civilians were killed in counterinsurgency operations. The violence was so severe that it was long covered up and is still rarely discussed openly, hence the term hidden war. Despite the conflict, France prepared a controlled path to independence. In 1960, it handed power to Ahmadou Ahidjo, a conservative politician seen as loyal to French interests rather than to the UPC's radical nationalism. Cameroon officially became independent on January 1, 1960, but the fighting continued for several years as French troops and Ahidjo's army crushed the remaining rebels. In 1966, opposition parties were banned and Cameroon became a one-party state. In 1972, a referendum was held on a new constitution which replaced the federation between East and West with a unitary state called the United Republic of Cameroon and further expanded the power of the president. Ahmadou Ahidjo's rule was authoritarian, but despite this, he was seen as noticeably lacking in charisma in comparison to many post-colonial African leaders. He didn't follow the anti-Western policies pursued by many of these leaders, which helped Cameroon achieve a degree of comparative political stability, retain Western investment, and see fairly steady economic growth. On June 30th, 1975, Paul Biya, a long-serving bureaucrat and administrator of the Ahidjo's government, was appointed prime minister. On November 4th, 1982, Ahidjo resigned as president and Biya was his legal successor. Since the 1980s, Biya has built up a circle of confidence who form the backbone of his power. The national police, gendarmerie, and army are led by men whose careers are entwined with his authority. Since the failed coup of 1984, Biya has been convinced that any change poses a threat. Rivals have been disarmed or imprisoned, and reforms have been used to neutralize opponents. His entourage expressed this fear, saying that Cameroon is not ready for a country without Biya. Without him, there will be chaos. Meanwhile, every Cameroonian feels the burden of the country's stagnation. The economy, weakened by years of mismanagement, offers little prospect. Youth unemployment is around 70%. Inflation is eating away at disposable income, and access to clean drinking water, healthcare, and decent education remains uncertain for many. In the West, an armed insurgency has been raging since 2016 in the English-speaking regions where separatists are fighting for their own state. Anglophone separatists have proclaimed the Federal Republic of Ambazonia and claim that Ambazonia should consist of the northwest and southwest region of Cameroon. Since 2017, Ambazonian rebels have engaged in armed conflict with the Cameroonian military in what is known as the Anglophone crisis, and have attempted to set up a government in exile, and supportive militias have been exerted control over parts of the claimed territory. No country has recognized Ambazonians' existence as of 2025. In the north of the country, terrorist groups like Boko Haram and Islamic State are ravaging local communities. There is a growing appetite for change, especially among young people, a deep desire for change that is still difficult to channel. Observers warn that the situation there could quickly spiral out of control. The proximity of Nigeria and Chad facilitates the flow of weapons, while the threat of Boko Haram continues in the border regions. In this climate, the word election seems to have lost its meaning in Cameroon. The distance between the official authorities and society has become unbearably large. Or, as the Cameroonian thinker and historian Achille Mbembe put it recently, popular sovereignty has once again been expropriated. Something in the foundations of society has been broken.